Hello everybody. So in this video we're going to talk about the maximum revenue earnings a Crete owner operator typically gets. There's a lot of variation from one owner operator to another owner operator, but one way to define it is what's the ceiling. The ceiling is like what's the highest that an owner operator can achieve. I don't know the exact amount, but I'll give you some ideas. I know of an owner operator who recently did 14,000 miles in 1 month. Now, can you do that every single month? No. That's 3,500 miles per week times 4 weeks, 14,000 miles for the month. I think whatever calculations you use, as a rule of thumb, you should, as a maximum, figure 48 weeks of driving, maximum. A lot of guys do less than that. I do less than that, but it depends on how much you really want to drive. When I think about the average owner-operator, say like the average is 10,000 miles per month, which is very doable. It's 2,500 miles for the week. The maximum is 14,000 miles for the month, which is 3,500 miles for the week. So let's just say you did 10,000 miles a month every month for 12 months. Very doable. That should get you a gross revenue of approximately $205,000 for the year. That's your gross. That's not what you get to keep. That's what the gross is. Generally, what you get to keep, or what they call net after taxes and all your other expenses, your net will probably be about half of that amount. So let's just say your gross was 210. Half of that, your net would be 105, which is very, very good. That's a six-figure income. That's very good. Do all owner-operators get that? Most, I would say most do. At Crete, most of them do, if they run 120,000 miles for the year. Can you do better than that? Yes, some do. Many do. Many do better than that. How much better? If you get your miles up to 135,000 miles for the year, which is kind of like 11,500 miles per month average every single month, you can get upwards of $235,000 gross for the year. And again, your net is going to be about half of that, so 117,000. Potentially, your ceiling could go higher than that. You could, in theory, go as high as, in theory, you could go as high as 268,000. You can't really do that. You would have to run 14,000 a month every single month in order to do that. So, your ceiling is probably going to be between 235,000 and 268,000. The absolute most, in my opinion, probably the most you probably could achieve realistically is 250,000 gross, and you're only going to be able to keep half, so that's about 125,000, which is great. That's great, but you'll have no life. I mean, you'll be driving every day, all year long. So you got to keep that in mind. I prefer less miles. Other guys prefer more miles. I prefer a gross revenue of 200,000 for the year. So I prefer 120,000 miles for the year. I prefer 10,000 miles per month. Could I do more? Yeah, I could do more, but I'm also a super saver. And I take my money and I save it and I invest it. So not only do I have money coming from driving, but I also have money coming from my investments, and my investments are doing very well. So I could make, for example, 100 grand from driving and another 25 grand or more from my investments. So, and that will continue to grow over the years. So my net income for the year is still 125,000 or more because of my investments. I think when you are trying to compare apples to apples, when you're trying to compare an opportunity driving at Crete versus Schneider or Landstar or Mercer, you need to look at that gross revenue, and the miles. Even when you're trying to compare it to the spot market, a lot of guys on spot market say work smarter, not harder. That's true, but what happens on the spot market, from what guys are telling me, is you don't run as many miles. You get paid more per mile, but you don't run as many miles. So in order to make 250,000 gross at Crete, you gotta run in excess of 135,000 miles. Well, in the spot market, you may be able to gross 250,000 and run 100,000 miles. So you're working smarter, not harder. But they have to negotiate with brokers. They have to get paid. They have to use factoring. They have to, work the load boards. They have to do a lot of sitting, negotiating. So, you can spend your time doing that stuff, or you can spend your time driving. To me, I'd rather spend my time driving than arguing with brokers. They would rather, work the load boards and go that way. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. I might do it someday, who knows? But that top number, gross revenue, is how you're going to compare apples to apples. Now, how does that compare to a company driver? Well, a senior company driver can do very well. They have, they're at the top of the pay scale, and they get profit sharing and 401k match, and a lot of times they're right there at right around $100,000, a senior company driver, but where the owner operator can do better is by running more miles. The thing you got to think about is your fixed expenses, which is like your truck payment and insurance. Those things are fixed costs monthly, and the more miles you run, the more profit you have, because those fixed costs stay the same regardless. So if you can run more miles, you're gonna be more profitable. So we say a company driver can earn 100,000 and an owner operator can earn 100,000. But if the owner operator drives more miles, he can earn more than 100,000. He could earn 110,000. He can earn 115,000 or 120,000, depending on how many miles he runs. How much do you want to put into it? Now, some of these guys are road warriors. Some of these guys are staying out 2 months straight or longer. I've heard stories, these were stories, I think exaggeration, of guys staying out 6 months. Now, I don't know how they check their mail, but I think those are exaggerations. 2 months, that's a lot. 2 months is a lot. What I like to do is I'll stay out 4 weeks, do a 34-hour reset, go out for another 4 weeks, take a week off. Other guys will just stay out 8 weeks straight, take a week off. Other guys will go out 6 weeks out, take a week off. But the way to win is take a look at your fixed costs and run the miles. Your fixed costs are always going to stay the same. The more miles you run, the more profitable you become. That's why guys do it. So that gives you an idea of what the opportunity is and the potential to earn. I think it's more attractive to someone early in their career, because they can't earn that kind of money as a company driver until they become a senior driver. That could take a decade, So for a junior driver to become an owner operator, they start earning good money early in their career rather than having to wait to get seniority for their company and enjoy, senior company driver pay. So I do think it's attractive to the younger drivers, but when you become an owner operator, yeah, you own all the profits, okay, but you own all the risks. And just because one person is successful doesn't mean another person is going to be successful. One guy, I know one driver, he buys brand new trucks because he can afford it. I know another driver who buys the crappiest old trucks that he can find because that's all he can afford. I can tell you that the guy with a brand new truck runs more profitable because all his repairs are under warranty. So no two owner operators are exactly alike. Just because one's successful doesn't mean the next guy is going to be successful. These guys have different strategies and tactics, the way they go about doing things. What works for one guy may not work for another guy. So it's a great opportunity, but you got to be the right kind of person who likes to grab the bull by the horns. To me, being an employee is intolerable. I can't be an employee. I'm sorry. I tried. It ain't gonna happen. The only way I can be happy is to be a business owner. I will work extremely hard if being self-employed. I'm not overly enthusiastic working for somebody else. That's just me. I could be a great business owner and a terrible employee. But that's just me. I enjoy being the owner. I enjoy having a small business. That may not be for everybody. Some people would prefer to be an employee. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is what the opportunities are like. This is what the maximum potential kind of looks like in that ballpark area. There's the theoretical ceiling, there's the practical ceiling, there's an average ceiling. There's a lot of variation. But, generally speaking, an average owner operator should be getting 10,000 miles per month, every month, a total of 120,000 miles for the year, and a gross revenue in excess of $200,000 on average. Some guys do better than that, much better, but that's the average. Okay, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.